guys, I'm Logan Hufford, and I am no longer in bondage to sexual addiction. I cherish those words because for a lot of years, I never thought that would be possible to say. I never thought I could be out of the hell on earth that I had created, this sexual addiction. These are my 10 points in 10 minutes. My first point might be a little bit controversial, and that's why I'm going to start with it. And that is this idea that my addiction made me powerless. I believe that statement to be true, and yet a lot of folks, me included before I got into recovery, a lot of folks can get tripped up on that. It sounds like an excuse. It sounds like I'm blaming my addiction. It's not my fault. I was powerless. And that's not what that means. Now, some folks could use it to make an excuse, to blame my disease, or that, it's like my addiction happened to me. I wasn't in control of my behavior anymore. I don't believe that. There are some nuggets of truth within those phrases, but I own the fact that I made my choices. I hurt people. I did those things. I own my behavior. But I think about it like this. My addiction was like this deep, dark cave that I created. I created my hell on earth. And so like every step I took into that cave, deeper and deeper into this terrible, dark cave, I took those steps. I'm responsible for taking those steps, and I own that. And yet, it's also true that at some point, I found myself stuck in a deep, dark cave, and I didn't know how to get out. I didn't know if I could get out. I didn't even know if that was a possibility. I didn't think it was, not for me. I'd gone too far. That's how I felt. So this is a longer point than most of these other ones will be. But again, addiction did make me powerless to just switch a toggle switch off. That's not how it worked. It was going to take a lot of people around me. It was going to take a complete change in my infrastructure. I couldn't just decide to stop being a sex addict and then boom, I'm just done. I'm not going to have those urges anymore, and I'm just not going to behave that way. That's not how it worked. I spent years grooming myself, essentially, making myself this monster, training myself to behave in a certain way, to chase after certain things. That wasn't just going to go away overnight. So did addiction make me powerless to just stop? Yes. And yet my actions were 100% my fault. Number 2, I did not need a broken home or abuse as a child to become an addict. I found addiction all on my own. There's no perfect home, but I had about as healthy of an infrastructure as just about anybody you'll meet. Both parents together did a great job raising their kids. I was the baby of 5. I always felt loved. I never felt unsafe in my family, and yet I still became an addict. Number 3, some people are not going to like this one. That's definitely why it's on the list. Porn is cheating. No ifs, ands, or buts. Porn is infidelity. If I am looking at porn, I am sexually putting myself with the person or the people on that screen. I am sexually being with them. That's infidelity. And somebody can say, oh, well, at least porn's not, fill in the blank. At least it's not having an affair. At least it's not hiring a prostitute. The collateral damage of one of those behaviors versus another is likely going to be different. Yes, that's a true statement. But we're not ranking offenses. We're not ranking sins. We're not ranking which one is better. It's infidelity. It's cheating. Which leads to my 4th point. Number 4, sexual addiction, including porn, is progressive. It does not stay where it started. Sexual addiction will take me further than I ever signed up for. It will take me further into that cave than I ever thought was possible. The type of pornography I watched when I was 19 was not the kind of stuff I watched when I was 14. The things that I did, the things that I allowed myself to do to other folks when I was 24 were very different than the types of things I allowed myself to do when I was 18. Sexual addiction is progressive, and it manifests differently. My mentor had decades of sexual addiction, and he and his wife could tell you the incredible pain that his addiction did to his family. And yet he never had sex outside of his marriage. his addiction manifested through pornography for decades. And my addiction, manifested very differently. It was pornography, it was having affairs, it was hiring prostitutes, it was calling phone sex lines, it was everything. But there was never a day in recovery that I looked at my mentor and thought, oh, I don't know if he can teach me anything. I don't know if he can hold me accountable because he doesn't get me. We have different stories. No, because our DNA was the same. It was like we were two different branches on the same tree. Did it flower a little bit differently? Did it manifest a little bit differently? Sure, but we had the same sexual addiction. We struggled with the same urges. In his case, he had a lot of healing that I needed, that I wanted from those sexual urges and those ways that I trained myself. So sexual addiction is progressive. It's not going to be the same forever. And that should scare you if you are somebody who plays with this, if you are somebody who feels like, oh, it's just porn, it's just, flirting, it's just this, that, and the other. No, it's going to increase. Eventually, I'm going to chase after more and more different, more depraved, more newer. I'm going to chase more. It's just like a drug. I need a bigger dose. I need something different. I need more to get that hit. Number 5, there is hope. I started off sharing just a little bit of how hopeless I was. I mean, I lived in a very dark place that was filled with self-hatred. It was hopelessness. I hated the fact that God created me because I didn't see a way out of that cave. Again, not making excuses for my behavior. I chose my choices. But I hated that I was in that cave. And I felt like this is just a given. I'm just going to be in this cave forever. But in 2016, I met guys that had done things that I had done, had lived similar lives to what I had done, and yet they had healing. Not just sobriety, not just not doing the bad thing, but they had healing. They had transformed lives. Most of them, not all, most of them had restored marriages. But all of them had healing. All of them had incredible, just transformative recovery journeys where they were healthy guys. They lived life in a healthy way. Not perfect, but they were healthy. They were honest. They were genuine. There is hope. That being said, number 6, I cannot Lone Ranger my way to healing. I can't be the lone wolf. I believe that it's going to be hard, but I can get sober by myself. I can white knuckle it and just not do it. I can do that for a while. Now, a while is a relative term. Like that might mean I'm sober for 2 days, and that might be the first time in my life that I was sober for 2 days. It might mean that I'm sober for 2 months, or maybe even a couple years. Maybe I can stop acting out for the rest of my life just by sheer willpower. Maybe. Doubtful. But I might. But I'm not going to heal. I'm not going to heal just by willpower and not doing the crap. I need people in my life, which leads me to my 7th point. I need heavy duty accountability. I don't just need people who love me. Like that's an awesome thing, and I do need that. I needed people, not just my family, not just my pastor, not just people that cared about me, but I needed people who had been down the dark road that I'd been down. And as I said before, not that they did every single thing that I'd ever done or vice versa. My mentor and I had different stories, right? But he knew how to spot a liar. He knew how to work with a manipulator. He knew how to call a narcissistic monster out on his crap because he had been that guy. I needed people like that to hold me accountable, to hold my feet to the fire, who knew, the ways that I struggled. He knew the things that I cared about. He knew that I didn't want to lose my wife and kids. He knew how to coach me and help me and love me. And it wasn't a comfortable place to be, but it was a safe place to be. Number 8 is I need a healthy environment. And these are all, of course, connected to each other, right? So I need people that care about me. I need people that care about me, that love me enough to call me out of my crap and ask me tough questions and give me tough feedback. And a healthy environment is kind of even beyond that. There's a couple pieces to this. As much as possible, I need to choose a healthy environment. Now, this looks different for different guys. Some guys need to change jobs. A lot of my sexual addiction was during the time that I sold cars, and I completely abused the trust that I gained from customers, and so Not selling cars anymore was a big deal for me. That changed my environment. Eventually, I was able to get out of the car business entirely. And that was a huge piece to change my environment. The type of music that I listen to. I love hip hop. I don't hardly ever listen to hip hop anymore. And what I do is a pretty limited scope, because so much of that music, and not just hip hop, it's so much music in general. It's not the kind of stuff I need to be filling my brain with. My environment matters. The music that I listen to, the people that I talk to, the things I'm around, that stuff bleeds into me, and it affects how I think and feel, which affects how I act. So my environment matters. Now, I can't control everything. I get on Facebook and boom, there's an ad, and that's a negative part of environment that, could take me down if I'm not careful. I can't necessarily, there's things I can control, but I can always control how I respond to something. I can always control how I respond to a trigger, a stressor. And then that's where tools come in. And I'm not going to get tools without accountability, without, recovery infrastructure, without people that can teach me those tools. Number 9 is this. I got into recovery to stop acting out. That's it, to stop cheating on my wife. But God used recovery to give me so much more than just sobriety. God used recovery to completely transform the way that I lived. To completely, he didn't tweak and just kind of fix a little bit of how I lived. He stripped away my habits, my routines, my mindsets, and then he rebuilt new ones. I always say, God didn't fix my marriage. God tore our marriage down to the ground, essentially, in a good way, so he could build up a new marriage, so that me and my wife could learn to talk and communicate and work with each other in healthy ways. To dance a new dance is how my mentor and his wife would always say it. So I got into recovery for one thing. Stop looking at porn, stop cheating. If I could, that's all I wanted. And yet God gave me so much more than that. The 10th one might sound a little bit weird, because I'm a dude and I'm a guy that was the sex addict. I was the perpetrator. I was the monster. But I'm not going to let that stop me from saying truth, which is, if you are a wife who has been harmed by sexual betrayal, you have been injured. You have been harmed. And just like any injury or harm that any human can suffer, the best thing to do is to take care of that, so that you can truly heal. Sexual betrayal trauma is absolutely trauma, and it's one of the worst types of, again, not to rank it, but it's one of the most damaging types of trauma that somebody can endure, because it's this person that I love, that I trusted, that I'm vulnerable with, that I'm married to, that I have a family with. This person had sex with someone else. They gave themselves over to pornography. They invited other things into our marriage bed. That is a terrible betrayal. That is a terrible trauma for a wife to suffer. So please seek help. Don't think of it as, well, that's my husband's problem, or that's my boyfriend's problem, or that's his crap he's got to figure out. So I don't need to do anything. Yes, he does need to figure stuff out. But whether he does or doesn't, you need healing. So please, there are counselors specifically trained for this, sexual betrayal trauma counselors. There are sexual betrayal trauma groups. My wife, Carrie, leads a group like that. There is mentorship available for women that have been hurt in this way. Please don't ignore it. Guys, thank you so much for spending a few minutes listening to me. And I hope that maybe one or two of these things, maybe all 10 of them, can give you some good takeaways. Appreciate your time. Take care.